In this video, I'm going to give you my final picks for UFC Vegas 87 DraftKings strategy, lineup construction, and how to approach this tricky slate. As always, you can call me Kunath. Let's make some money this week. Instead of starting with the value plays, I just want to talk about what's going on with this slate because the pricing is wild. Now, the pricing's not a good or bad thing, but it is a lot different than what we're used to seeing. So to give you an idea, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 fighters priced at 9,000 or more. That's on an 11 fight slate. After Raul Rosas Jr. sprinted out of the arena, we only had 12 fights last week. So with just 12 fights to work with last week, only 4 fighters were priced above 9,000. Now most of the favorites are. They essentially deleted the mid-range this week. There's no 8,200, 8,000 kind of fight. You have Shamil Gaziev at 8,300. That's reasonable. You've got Al-Sawadi at 8,400. Also reasonable. But then you jump up to $8,600 Vinicius Oliveira, and that's where it starts to get expensive right there. So I think this is an interesting slate. It's one where I would argue that when you're building your tournament lineups, you're not really building for 6 winners. And that's what you need to win tournaments typically, is you typically need 6 winners here. But I don't think you're going to find a whole lot of lineups with 6 winners because a lot of these favorites, despite being so pricey, they look damn good. Like, are you really going to argue with Umar Nurmagomedov winning, Ludovic Klein against an AJ Cunningham, who probably is not UFC caliber? He gave it his best shot in Contender Series, but he's got really bad striking defense, and he's against somebody who's super sharp in Ludovic Klein. Doing this on short notice, making your UFC debut, it's tough. Javid Basharat's probably getting it done with his grappling and his range. Javid Basharat, 4 fights into his UFC career, can't get a picture on DraftKings. Oscar, before I'm done recording this, get DraftKings on the horn. We got to talk. Eryk Anders, probably not somebody you want to play at 9,300, but he's fighting Jamie Pickett. And if you're new to the channel and this is the first video you're watching, I suggest you stop what you're doing, go back and watch the predictions video from earlier in the week. That'll be linked in the description and in a pinned comment. That's a full card breakdown where we talk about all these fights in greater detail. This is more DraftKings strategy, what you need to do to be successful on this slate. Just below that at 9,200, you could feel pretty good about Steve Erceg getting it done. I think he's got Matt Schnell covered everywhere with the wrestling, with the volume, with the chin. Started to fall into a bit of a Cosby cadence there. I had to catch myself. Muhammad Mokaev, absolutely the truth. Look at the DraftKings scores. Look at the average score. He hasn't lost. He's got 126, 120, 122, 99, 102. He's somebody that you need to click on this week. Vitor Petrino has done nothing but show up as well. 116, 104, 94. He is going down. So maybe he scores like 80 this week. No, I'm just kidding. He probably still scores quite a bit. So the reason we structure the video differently this week than we typically do, instead of just getting into the value plays, is to get an idea on just a macro level of what we're dealing with. That won't only impact when we build lineups later, but that's also going to have an effect on the value plays that we pick. It's going to play a big role because we're not just looking for fighters that have a path to victory. We're going to highlight them, but we're also looking for safe floors. Some of these fighters are going to offer you better scoring floors than others, and we're going to get into all of that right now. The first value play is right at the top at 7,900 with biggie boy Jairzinho Rozenstruik, obviously. You look at his scores and his wins: 94, 127, 127, 90, 97, 106, 130. He's got true one-shot knockout power, and Gaziev could just be running straight at him on a straight line, kind of like he did against Martin Buday. He just went into destroyer mode against Martin Buday, started walking him down, throwing big hooks, and Martin Buday just really couldn't answer back with anything because of that pressure. But Jairzinho Rozenstruik is not afraid to answer back. He had Francis Ngannou essentially diving at him and still was like, oh, I'll throw a leg kick or two. I'll throw a little overhand left. Ngannou ultimately deleted him, but that's not the point of me saying that. The point of me saying that is that Jairzinho Rozenstruik is still going to throw something out there to see what sticks, like your Italian grandmother making sure the pasta is ready, even if he's getting pressured heavily. So he's got to be somebody you consider in your value plays, somebody that you're going to want some exposure to if you're running multiple lineups, of course. I'm not a huge fan. I don't think he gets it done this week. I think Gaziev's got his number and he's going to walk him down and knock him out in the first or second round, but Jairzinho Rozenstruik has to be in value play consideration. Now, the next value play is Bernardo Sopai, who was a late addition to the card. We didn't talk about him in the predictions video because we didn't know that he was going to be here in the predictions video. He's taken this fight on super short notice. He was supposed to be defending his title over in another organization in Sweden, but he gets the call from the UFC. He shows up and the guy throws down. And he's somebody who you should be paying attention to this week. I think he has a very clear path to victory, and the path to victory is really just to let it all hang out. Don't be afraid of the power coming back his way from Vinicius Oliveira, and just stick with it, because I think after the first round, we're going to see Vinicius Oliveira start to fall apart a little bit. Bernardo Sopai is going to be there until the end. He's going to be able to match the Brazilian's power, and I think that he finds a shot that puts him down. If you've looked at the betting lines, you see that swinging in favor of Sopai this week. Vinicius Salvador, devastating one-shot knockout power, but this kid's not going anywhere, and I think that he's going to just stay in his face, make him work, and I think that he beats him up in the third round. out. So give me Bernardo Sopai to win this fight, cash as the underdog, and he's probably one of the best plays on DraftKings at point per dollar at 7,600. Another guy I like on DraftKings is $7,300 Claudio Ribeiro. So we talked about this a little bit on the predictions video. He has the tools to get it done here. He's the better grappler. I think he's going to be the more willing grappler in there as well. I see him shooting for takedowns, or at least trying to work for takedowns once the fight is up against the cage. He throws good hard calf kicks, and you need to do something like that against somebody like CLD to slow down that movement. I think he's going to have success doing that. I also think it's a fight that you need to target on DraftKings this week. It's going to go under. You look at his fights in the UFC, all second round finishes, win or lose, all knockouts. They all came with a knockdown for the winner. So Claudio Ribeiro is somebody who is just DraftKings gold, whether it's a fade or you're playing him. You needed Roman Kopylov that night. You needed him against Ugly Joe Holmes, and you needed Abdulrazak Al Hassan early last year. Simple click, basically a system play at this point. So just look at the ownership. You want to be overweight to that if you're using a lineup optimizer, running multiple lineups. We'll talk more about that later. But I would suggest getting overweight to the field on Claudio Ribeiro and having some Chris Leroy Duncan this week. Now, those are the value plays that you should have exposure to, and you can come up with valid reasons as to why. But now I want to get into a chunk. There's three of them. You got three guys here who all kind of fall into one bucket, and that's Matt Schnell, Jamie Pickett, and Amin Zahabi. All three of these guys are very big underdogs. All three of these guys have really bad matchups on their hands, but all three of these guys are very, very likely to go the distance. When you look at the favorites in these matchups, Steve Erceg has yet to finish a fight in the UFC, Javid Basharat has yet to finish a fight in the UFC, and Eryk Anders, I think this is just going to be a slow, sloggy kind of fight. Based on the way that the pricing is, based on the way that the matchups look, I think there's a really good chance that the winning lineup this week only has 5 winners in it. So if that's the case, I would assume that if these 3 fights don't finish, one of these 3 guys is going to show up in the optimal lineup, and you can make an argument for one over the other. Matt Schnell might be tricky on the ground for Steve Erceg. You might get a reversal or two here, which they're treated the same way as takedowns are on DraftKings. That's plus 5 points. Steve Erceg really believes in his chin, as he should. He has a fantastic chin, so Matt Schnell might be able to land on him a little bit. Steve Erceg might not be so defensively sound because he doesn't need to be. Amin Zahabi has power in his hands. They know what they're looking for against Basharat. It's just easier said than done with somebody like Basharat, who's just a master of distance. You can look at all the tape and think, okay, he's not doing anything crazy, but then you get in there and realize that he's doing all the little things so well. But he's going to go the distance, and if he could defend takedowns here, I think that he can give Basharat a competitive fight at range. And then Jamie Pickett, who I like the least out of this group, is going to be fighting Eryk Anders, who is always tired. Eryk Anders gets so tired so fast, and Jamie Pickett's going to get tired fast as well, but he's got a big reach advantage. If these guys decide to strike a lot, if they decide to clinch a lot, he could land some strikes in the clinch. Really what you're looking for is 30 points. If you can get 30 points from any one of these 3 guys, you're in a really good spot. So again, it's a strange card when it comes to DraftKings pricing, but we do what we can with what we have. So with that said, let's use some of these value plays to build some lineups. We'll start with cash game lineups, but before we do, if you haven't already, like the video, subscribe to the channel, comment something for the algorithm. For the last few weeks, I've issued a challenge where if you can comment 2 underdogs and those 2 underdogs win, then I will shout you out in the video. And for UFC 298, only 1 underdog won, so you all got asked out. And for UFC Mexico, because again, Raul Rosas Jr. ran for the hills, a lot of you guys had Ricky Tercios. So in this sea of comments of people saying, here are the 2 underdogs that I think, only 1 person got through. So if you see this person in the comments this week, give them some virtual dap. Wangman Balzac, I don't know. He had Ortega and Aguilar getting it done. The only person to successfully call 2 underdogs. It's not that easy, is it, folks? So hats off to you, Mr. Balzac. Now back to the breakdown. For your cash games this week, we're not going to be stacking the main event because one of these guys is going to go down pretty early. What I suggest is that we go double punt with guys that we don't think are going to get finished. So I'm really going to come down here and get Amin Zahabi, Jamie Pickett, 9,100 left over, and now I can just grab the winners, basically. Guys who are going to get it done. I only need 4 of them for our cash games, right? To keep it simple, I can go right up the list. Vitor Petrino, Muhammad Mokaev, Steve Erceg. Now I've got 9,100 left over. Obviously, I can't compete up here. Christian Leroy Duncan, he's in a tricky fight, so I don't want to plug him into the lineup, despite him being so highly priced. Vinicius Oliveira, somebody who's in a dogfight as well, and I think the opposite side has a bit more dog than he does. And cardio is king in MMA, which leaves me with Abdul Karim Al-Sawadi. I think the Prince of Palestine gets it done over Loic Razgabov this week. I think he's just going to push a heavier pace, and I think that he's going to get him out of there sometime late. So now what I would probably do if I were in your position with this same lineup, lucking out Steve Erceg, and I'm putting in Umar Nurmagomedov at 9,700. There's your peanut butter and jelly right there. Simple cash game formula. You build your cash games right. You are going to be on the right side of the 50% split split that these cash games give you more often than not. If you want the official cash game core and all the DFS tools to come along with it, you can find all of that right on KUNATH'MMA.com. You can go right over to plans if this is new for you and you haven't seen this before. There are two options. You can get the lineup optimizer, which will help you build better lineups because you'll be able to have access to the projections. You can make your own projections, set any kind of rules that you need, really customize it to what you're hoping to achieve, and generate lineups based on the rules that you set. Now, if you're somebody who plays in these big contests that are 20 max, 150 max, you're competing against a lot of optimizers already. On everything else that comes along with it, that could also be in the total access package. That's going to give you the DFS strategy guide, lineup optimizer, official betting article, community forum, all of that good stuff. All of that is on KUNATH'MMA.com. That'll be linked in the description and in a pinned comment. Now let's build some tournament lineups. So for your tournament lineups, my favorite tournament play this week is by far Shamil Gaziev. Last time out, he put a crazy pace on Martin Budai. I think he does the same thing here against Biggie Boy Jairzinho Rozenstruik. So give me Gaziev to get it done, 8,300. Now again, we're kind of in tricky situations, but we're going to build a few lineups, so we don't need to make this the best lineup we've ever seen. But what we're going to do here is grab somebody like Sopai, 85.25 left over per fighter. I'm going to go and dip into my bag of garbage here and grab Matt Schnell at 7,000. Matt Schnell's made us money before. I'm not calling him garbage, but he's up against it. 9,000 left over. Let's grab somebody like Vitor Petrino. I'll grab Al Sawadi. I've got 9,700 left over. You got 9,700 left over. You want to click that Umar Nurmagomedov button, of course. I also feel like Umar Nurmagomedov is somebody who probably comes in under-owned because of how expensive he is relative to the rest of the slate. I think a lot of people will try to get a better price on as much ceiling with Muhammad Mokaev, and there's nothing wrong with that. Now, if you want to get really crazy and try to get both of them in your lineup, we can see what that looks like. Umar Nurmagomedov, Muhammad Mokaev in the same lineup is going to be tough to pull off. But if I were in this situation, I'd probably just take out Al Sawadi. I'd go down there and grab Claudio Ribeiro at 7,300, leave 1,000 salary on the table, and you're good. And one thing we talk about on the channel is leaving salary on the table. A lot of people are scared to, but this game is all about getting different. Even last week, we had Sam Hughes in our lineup. Sam Hughes was coming in at 6%. How much success did Sam Hughes have? None. She came in super cheap, super low owned, and if she did hit, she would have broken the entire slate, and everybody who had Sam Hughes would have shot way up the leaderboard. One of the surefire ways for you to get different in DFS, especially in MMA DFS, is to leave some salary on the table. And when the pricing is as tight as it is this week, people are going to be penny pinching as best as they can. And this number right here, the remaining salary number, is going to be as low as possible for people. So if you were in this situation, I would let this fly. Let's build another lineup. Let's start with Muhammad Mokaev. Let's grab CLD. I want to get some representation for you CLD backers. Let's grab Oliveira. I've got 7,800 left over. Let's stick in this mid-range, see what else we can do. 6,700 left over. You can grab Ayman Zahabi. Now, you left no salary on the table, but you do have access to a lot of upside. You have one of the highest ceilings on the entire slate in Muhammad Mokaev. You have finishing upside. You've got cardio on your side in Al Sawadi. You've got a heavyweight knockout artist in Gaziev. And then you've got Ayman Zahabi here, your punt at 6,700, which could happen. And by could happen, I mean we have one loser in the optimal lineup, and that's Ayman Zahabi down at 6,700. Now, we'll build another lineup or two, but real quick, just a couple of guys that I'm not really that high on this week. Javid Basharat, not really dying to play. He's been favored all throughout his UFC career, and from a DraftKings perspective, he just hasn't gotten there for you. So not somebody I'm looking to play. If he wins, cool. If he beats me, that's fine. I can live with that. Eryk Anders, outside of picking up a knockout, is probably not going to give you a whole lot. He might get some takedowns here and there, but his volume's not that high. Jamie Pickett's probably not going to let him get a whole lot of offense off. He can grind a decision win out, but at the same time, we've seen him win decisions and score 81. He scored 56 in a decision win over GM3. I don't think his knockout upside is all that high, and at 9,300, he's just not somebody you need to roster this week. Steve Erceg is not somebody I'm dying to play either, just because of what he's looked like from a scoring perspective so far. And Ludovic Klein is somebody who could show up in the optimal lineup. He could land 80 significant strikes inside of 2 rounds and knock this guy out and show up on the optimal lineup. But at 9,600, just put yourself in a position to afford the safer, higher ceiling Umar Nurmagomedov. So really, this whole range, I'm not really dying to touch. Obviously, you can see that as we're building the lineups. Let's come here to Sopai. Let's get Biggie Boy in there just to give you guys the look. Let me come down here to Tyson Pedro. 8,500 left over. You can get Claudio Ribeiro. I'm cool with this. You want to make some adjustments here. Take out Biggie Boy. Put Shamil Gaziev in there. Take out Tyson Pedro. You've got 8,000 salary left over. That's when you're going to come down here. And the Tyson Pedro is a way more boom or bust play than somebody like Jamie Pickett, Matt Schnell, Eamon Zahabi. He went the distance against Modestas Bukauskas and scored 35 points, and that's not horrible, but that's not typically what his losses are looking like. You've got 15 points here against Mauricio Shogun Hua. OSP, he scores 16 points. Against Latifi, he scores 15 points. So you're looking really at that 15-point range at best in a loss. And if you're searching for value, you might look at Loic Razgabov, but I'm going to help you with this one. You don't want to play Loic Razgabov thinking that he's going to score you 120 DraftKings points or rack up all these takedowns like he did against Esteban Ribovics. Esteban Ribovics keeps his feet about as well as Bambi on ice. And you look, when he fought somebody with strong hips, decent takedown defense, and Matus Rebecki, no takedowns at all. 8 points, and he made it to the second round. So Loic Razgabov, you might be hunting for value, don't. And if you check in the pinned comment and in the description, and if you go on DraftKings and we're friends on DraftKings, I could send you the request. But I'm running my $1 winner take all contest on DraftKings, so it's a private contest. We're probably going to have about 60, maybe 70 people playing it this week. If you have what it takes, hit the link in the description, hit the link in the pinned comments. $1. If more people play, the higher the prize. And you probably can afford to play with just the crowns that you have on your account. So I'll see you there. If you've made it to this point in the video, thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, comment something for the algorithm, and I'll see you next week. Good luck.